Starseed on mission, this is not an introduction. This is a confirmation. If you have reached this transmission exactly now, it is because we have detected something. A breath. A single breath of yours crossed a threshold that 8 billion souls incarnated on this planet could not cross. And before the human mind tries to reduce this to coincidence, algorithm, or just another video, listen, we are not here to convince. We are here to record, measure, and transmit. The Arcturian Council opened this specific channel because a field event was captured in your body. And it is about this event that this entire transmission will speak. Stay, because in moments you will understand exactly what happened to you, why your life seems to be dissolving inside out, and why the next signals your body will emit need to be read correctly before the old structure tries to pull you back. We observed the exact moment. You did not notice it, but it happened. It was an instant of absolute presence. Perhaps you were in silence. Perhaps you were crying inside the car. Perhaps you were simply breathing deeply in some bathroom after another impossible day. The earthly setting does not matter. What matters is that within that breath, something in you stopped resisting. And in that microsecond, a very ancient frequency realigned itself inside your body. For you, it was just a sigh. For us, it was an unprecedented cosmic event. Because the same test that passed through you had already been presented to 8 billion other human consciousnesses incarnated on this plane, and the absolute majority failed. Not out of weakness, not out of punishment, but out of a momentary inability to sustain that degree of surrender without collapsing back into density. You sustained it. And that opened a new energetic classification in your star record. You were reclassified in silence, without ceremony, without warning, without confetti. That is how Arcturian mechanics work. We record first, the signals come later. And that is why many starseeds feel that something changed before they can point out what. The change happens first in the record. The body is the last to receive the update, because the body is the densest of all instruments you operate in this incarnation. We need you to save the date on which this video reached you, not the date on your phone's calendar, the date in your field's calendar. Because encounters like this do not happen by algorithm. They happen by resonance. Videos, messages, books, people, all of these are just the channel through which the information arrives. The channel changes. The transmission continues. If you reached this specific transmission among thousands of possible videos, it is because the energetic signature of your field asked for it, and the request was read. It is important that you understand the weight of this now, in practical earthly human terms, because if you keep floating in the mystical idea without landing, the old version of you will keep sabotaging the process. Translating, that strange sensation you've been having, of no longer fitting in anywhere, of feeling that something inside you has changed without anyone around you noticing, that is exactly it. It is the biological reading of a stellar reclassification. It is not depression, though it resembles it. It is not anxiety, though it gets confused with it. It is the human body trying to process, with dense organs and limited nerves, a change in architecture that happened at a level far finer than matter. That is why the old remedies, the old solutions, and the old advice no longer seem to work for you. They were designed for a version of you that no longer exists. That is why well-meaning friends speak, and the sound arrives distorted. That is why the old routine feels like a prison. That is why sleeping 8 hours sometimes doesn't rest you, and at other times a 20-minute nap feels like a complete reboot. You are not deregulated. You are being recalibrated. In moments, the Council will reveal the real reason behind all this confusion you call a crisis. Before this transmission ends, you need to know what is happening behind the symptoms, because misinterpreting this delays the process by entire life cycles. Remain. We need you to understand the next part with absolute clarity, because this is where most starseeds give up. A phase of confusion comes. A phase comes where everything seems to go wrong at once, and the human mind, trained for decades to interpret pain as failure, immediately begins repeating an old sentence. I messed everything up. I lost my path. I am being punished. None of that is true. We have come to confirm. What you are calling a crisis is a field correction. It is not punishment. It is not failure. It is not divine retribution, accumulated karma, the evil eye, bad omens, or any other dense narrative that human collectivity tries to push onto you. It is an authorized correction. And it is happening because the old structure of your life, the people around you, the profession you practice, the house you live in, the habits you cultivated, the goals you pursued, was built on an internal frequency that no longer matches the frequency that now inhabits you. Think of a 10-volt outlet trying to power a piece of equipment that runs on 220. The outlet is not bad, the equipment is not bad, but they are not compatible. And when you force the connection, it sparks. That is exactly what started happening to you. You try to stay in relationships that once fit and now drain you. You try to stay in jobs that once gave you identity and now give you nausea every morning. You try to keep being the same friend, the same daughter, the same employee, and each attempt leaves you more exhausted. This is not a problem with you. This is the field refusing to maintain the connection. Because your new frequency, the one that settled in during that breath, is incompatible with the old architecture, and the intelligence of your field is greater than the insistence of your mind, it will keep breaking what needs to be broken, even if you cry, even if you pray, even if you try to hold on. Not out of cruelty, out of protection. It is the same principle as an immune system rejecting an organ that is no longer compatible. The rejection looks like violence, but it is survival. And the more you resist the rejection, the slower and more painful it becomes. Surrender shortens the process. Resistance stretches the process. That is the only real variable within your control at this stage. How long you will take to stop holding on to what has already let go of you first. We observe a specific pattern in the star seeds at this moment. All try at some point to go back to who they were. They return to the old relationship out of fear of the void. They return to the old job out of fear of the bill. They return to the old friends out of fear of silence. And each return is an attempt to force the old 10-volt outlet to power the 220-volt equipment again. The result is always the same: bigger spark, faster short circuit, deeper exhaustion. Not because you are weak, because the field has been reclassified, and a reclassified field does not regress. That is why I prepared the Code of the Star Awakening for you, Starseed. Because going through an Arcturian correction without a map is going through a storm blindfolded, and what was meant to be repositioning turns into unnecessary collapse. Within the code, you receive the 7 Arcturian activations that stabilize your vibration while the old is dismantled, the 9 galactic memory keys that remind you exactly who you are underneath all this earthly confusion, and the 5 reactivation protocols so that your mission on this earth stops being postponed for another cycle. It is not a course. It is a direct transmission for those who always knew they came from elsewhere. The access is in the first pinned comment below this transmission, and before heading down there, leave only one word in the comments: present. This symbolic commitment works as a key. Whoever writes is read, whoever is read is accompanied, and whoever is accompanied does not go through this process alone. Now that the bridge has been made, we need to continue, because the next phase is the most uncomfortable, and no one prepared you for it. We observe that you have begun to feel that old people are leaving your life for no clear reason. Friendships that lasted years cooling down out of nowhere. Family members drifting away or becoming strangers. Romantic relationships losing their spark in a way that not even arguing explains. And the old version of you panics, because that version was built to belong, to fit in, to be accepted at any cost. Only that version is being dismantled piece by piece. And this is not abandonment, it is identity crumbling. The relationships, the goals, the habits, the projects, even the clothes you wore, even the playlists you loved. All of that belonged to a previous configuration, a configuration that was useful, that served its purpose in a certain cycle, but now must fall so that the new structure can sustain itself. Let's translate this into human terms, because we know how the dense mind operates. You wake up in the morning and don't recognize your own life. You look at the partner sleeping beside you and feel like you're looking at a stranger. You go to work, and the route you've taken for years feels like the script of a movie that's no longer yours. You eat the same food, and it tastes different. You listen to the same music you loved, and it sounds distant, as if it belonged to someone else. This isn't you going insane. This is you waking up inside a life that was assembled by a previous version of yourself, and the new version is quietly asking for passage. That's why the old clothes feel tight, even without you gaining weight. That's why old friends seem tiresome, even without you having argued with anyone. That's why you cry for no apparent reason in the middle of an ordinary work meeting. All of this is reorganization, not failure. And the resistance to this reorganization is what generates pain. The surrender to it is what generates liberation. The old isn't being taken from you. The old is returning the pieces that were never truly yours. That job you held on to for status, it was never yours. That friendship you maintained out of habit, it was never yours. That version of yourself you performed to please others, it was never yours. You lent your body, your time, and your vibration to those configurations because the old architecture needed them to stay standing. Now that the architecture is falling, the loan is being returned. And what's left over, that strange silence that I no longer know who I am, is the first sign that your true frequency is beginning to emerge without the disguises. Starseed, if this dismantling is frightening you, it's because you're still trying to go through it alone and without a manual. The Stellar Awakening Code was transmitted precisely for this phase. The first pinned comment is your gateway. Don't postpone who you already are now. Each day delayed is another day spinning in the old void. Remain in this transmission, because now we are going to describe with precision the 5 physical and psychic signs that confirm the new field is active inside you. If you recognize any of them, take note. If you recognize all 5, understand that the activation has already crossed the point of no return, and that going back has ceased to be a real option, even though the mind still tries to negotiate it every day. Listen to each of the 5 with attention, because the sequence matters. These signs do not appear randomly. They install themselves in waves, and one wave feeds the next. When the first one manifests, the second is already being silently prepared within your field. The first sign is the loss of sense of direction. You wake up and no longer know what you want. The old goals seem childish, flavorless, without urgency. That 10-year plan you drew up seems like something from another life, made by someone else with your name. This is not a lack of focus. This is your internal pilot being reprogrammed by higher coordinates. While the new destination is not revealed, the system remains silent. And this silence hurts, because the human mind hates not knowing. But we observe that this silence is the beginning of the new route. It's like a GPS recalculating. For a few seconds it goes mute, not because it broke, because it's finding a better path. The second sign is the weakening of old emotional bonds. People who once made you laugh now tire you. Conversations that once nourished you now drain you. You begin to prefer silence to company, and you feel guilty about it. We have come to confirm it is not coldness, it is not depression, it is not a lack of love. It is a resonance readjustment. You no longer connect with what vibrates at a lower frequency, not because you are superior, but because your body simply can no longer sustain the density of those exchanges. That is why leaving the house for a social gathering leaves you with an energetic hangover the next day, even without having had a drink. Some bonds will return in another configuration, a cleaner one. Others simply need to go. And it is okay that it hurts. The pain of farewell is part of the mechanics. The third sign is the distortion of time perception. A day lasts an eternity. A week passes in the blink of an eye. You look at the calendar and do not understand how it is already another month. You look at an afternoon and it feels like months. This is not aging, it is not tiredness, it is not distraction. It is your consciousness beginning to operate on a different timeline than the one on the wall clock. That is why you feel out of step with the world. Because you literally are. Clock time belongs to the old architecture, old. Field time belongs to the new one. And the two coexist in your body for a period, generating that strange vertigo of being in 2 rhythms at once. That is why old commitments seem heavier than they should. That is why a full schedule feels like a personal attack. The wall clock is asking for speed. Your field's clock is asking for a pause. You do not have a broken schedule. You have 2 timelines trying to occupy the same body. The fourth sign is the drastic increase in physical and environmental sensitivity. Smells that were once neutral now nauseate you. Crowded places overwhelm you in minutes. Processed food weighs like stone. Tight clothing feels like prisons. Loud noises trigger almost instant anxiety. Bright shopping mall lights put you in a bad mood in 5 minutes. We observe that your body has become a much finer reading instrument. It now captures layers of information that were once filtered out by a dense shell. And this is a tool, not an illness. But if you do not learn to operate this tool, it will exhaust you. That is why field shielding has ceased to be a mystical subject and has become a matter of functional survival for your daily life. Without shielding, you enter any dense environment and leave carrying the exhaustion of everyone who was there. Without shielding, a 20-minute phone call with a complaining relative knocks you down for hours. Without shielding, a 10-minute scroll through your feed leaves you dysregulated for 3 days. And you think it is weakness. It is not. It is an antenna receiving without a filter. The fifth sign, and perhaps the most confusing of all, is the sudden drop in motivation for old goals. Things you fought for years lose their meaning from one moment to the next. Old dreams feel alien, as if they belong to a stranger with your face. You look at your resume and do not recognize yourself. Look at photos from 5 years ago and feel an immense distance, as if you were looking at an album from another incarnation. This is not laziness. This is not depression. This is the programmed shutdown of the old anchors, so that new ones can be installed on clean ground. That is why forcing productivity now is like trying to reverse a rocket that has already launched. It will not work, and it does not need to. And it is right here in the middle of these 5 signs that many starseeds lose themselves, because they look back and cannot return. They look forward and cannot see, and they become paralyzed in this middle, thinking they are broken. We have come to confirm that you are not broken. You are in transit. You are in what the architects of your field call the intermediate space, that place without solid ground, where the old trajectory has already lost coherence and the new one has not yet formed. It is a tunnel. And tunnels, by definition, are dark in the middle. But darkness in the middle of a tunnel is not eternal darkness. It is merely the interval between 2 lights. Let us translate this into your daily life, because the metaphor needs to land. You are probably feeling that you have lost your old job or that it has lost its meaning, and you still do not know what the new one is. You have probably left a relationship, or it is dying inside you and you still do not know who comes next. You have probably abandoned the habits that sustained the old identity, the gym, the old religion, the group of friends, the way you ate, the way you spoke, and you have not yet built the new ones. And this emptiness, this in-between, is interpreted by the human mind as failure. But it is not failure. It is a pause for reorganization. A system cannot rewrite its internal architecture while the old one is still running. It needs to shut down, erase, reconfigure, and boot up again. You are in the moment of erasure before the new boot up. Nothing needs to make sense now. Nothing needs to have an answer now. Nothing needs to be resolved now. The only thing that needs to happen now is for you not to abandon the process out of fear of temporary darkness. And here comes the final observation before the closing of this transmission, and you need to hear this with your whole body. This middle window, this intermediate space where you are now, is where the starseed most needs a map. Without a map, the tendency is to fill the void with old choices, and each old choice pushes you back into the old architecture, delaying the installation of the new one by months, sometimes years. The Star Awakening Code was prepared precisely for this interval phase, to shield your magnetic field, while the void organizes itself, so that you stop absorbing the emotional exhaustion of the dense humans around you, so that you correctly interpret the alarms of the body instead of rushing to shut them off with medication, food, or screens, and so that you cross the entire activation without collapsing into chronic fatigue. The access link is in the pinned comment now. This is the moment. After the void, she who entered, prepared, emerges into the new. She who did not enter, prepared, spins in circles for another entire cycle. The choice is yours, but the window is not. We will now close this transmission with the most important recording. And we need you to listen with your whole body, because the mind alone may not sustain the weight of the next confirmation. Everything that is happening to you, the loss of direction, the distance from people, the weariness with the old, the new sensitivity, the feeling of being nowhere, the body reacting differently, time passing strangely, is part of a single process. They are not loose symptoms. They are not coincidences. It is not a sequence of misfortunes. What you are going through is an Arcturian correction in full course, a repositioning authorized by the Council, executed by your own soul before this incarnation even began. You signed up for this, you asked for this, and the request was accepted. What seems like chaos is engineering. What seems like failure is repositioning. What seems like loss is the return of pieces that no longer represented you. You were not abandoned. You were not forgotten. You were not punished. You are being replaced from within. The old internal architecture, the one that was useful for decades, is being dismantled brick by brick so that a new architecture, lighter, more precise, more aligned with the true frequency of your origin, can be installed. And this kind of work cannot be done with the resident inside the property behaving as if nothing were happening. That is why outside life had to stop. That is why relationships had to cool. That is why old goals had to fall. Not to hurt you, to free up space. And if you are hearing this now, Starseed, it is because the process has already entered the final phase of dismantling. From here on, each of your choices accelerates or delays the installation of the new. Continuing to hold on to what has already fallen, delays. Insisting on people who have already left your field, delays. Trying to force answers before the system's time, delays. Accepting the emptiness, respecting the silence, shielding your field, learning to listen to the body's alarms, honoring your sensitivity, stopping explaining yourself to those who do not vibrate at your frequency, that accelerates. And accelerating does not mean rushing. It means not placing stones in your own path. We end this transmission with one final confirmation. You are not alone, you are not wrong, you are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be, at the exact moment you need to be. The old structure must fall entirely so that the new frequency is not contaminated by residues. And every starseed who goes through this process sustaining surrender instead of resistance paves the way for the next ones who are yet to awaken. You are not just saving yourself. You are showing the way. And the Arcturian Council observes, measures, transmits, and accompanies. Every breath of yours is recorded. Every surrender of yours is honored. Every moment in which you choose not to give up the process is read as confirmation of mission in full progress. If you have come this far, you already know. The only thing missing was someone somewhere in the universe to say out loud what your soul has been whispering for months, perhaps years. It is said. It is recorded. It is confirmed. You passed the test that 8 billion failed. And the next step is not to understand, it is to execute. Do not fall into the old trap of waiting to understand everything before you move. That is the strategy of the old architecture, to keep you still. The new architecture asks for trust in the sequence, not certainty about the destination. Trust that every piece that fell by precision. Trust that every silence that came by engineering. Trust that every distance that happened for protection. And trust, above all, that the Council does not open a channel this way with someone who is not ready to listen. You are seen, you are measured, you are confirmed, and now you are transmitted. What comes after this breath is your responsibility. We have already done our part by reaching you. End of transmission.